She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. She'll put the pressure in your fragile skull. I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know, and she's got me living in a chemical oven.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another true crime video. Today we're doing something a little different. As August comes to a close, I thought we should wrap it up with some cases that we have in the past covered, and they have recently had some breakthroughs and updates. So we are going to talk about Alissa Turney, Scott Peterson, and Dylan Asiu Gomez Perez, and go over some recent updates in these cases. Before we jump in, I'd like to have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Ana Luisa Jewelry. This is the only jewelry I wear, except for my wedding rings and sometimes the earrings that my husband got me for our 5-year anniversary. And it's not only because I find their pieces to be well-made and unique, but because they are a sustainable company concerned with the environment and their impact on it. Ana Luisa was founded to bring clarity to the jewelry industry, making simple yet stunning pieces you will reach for every day. They use 14-karat, 100% recycled solid gold, 100% recycled sterling silver made of 92.5% pure silver, and sustainable diamonds, lab-grown, not pulled from the earth. Ana Luisa's vision was realized when they became the first direct-to-consumer jewelry brand to become carbon neutral. And for those of us concerned with our pocketbooks, Ana Luisa offers beautifully well-made jewelry without the high markups of jewelry stores. With the middleman out of the way, Ana Luisa is able to charge a fraction of what those big box stores do, which benefits you since you'll be receiving awesome and gorgeous pieces for less, and it also benefits the world because every purchase from Ana Luisa leaves zero negative impact on the environment. I just got 2 new pairs of earrings, and I'm not wearing either of them right now because the back of one of my earrings that my husband gave me for anniversary, it's stuck. It's got this sort of clasp, which is supposed to be harder to fall off so you don't lose your earrings, because I am known to do that. And I guess it's doing its job a little too well. So it's broken or stripped or something, and I have to bring it back to the place that he bought them from and have them take it off of me, because right now they're literally stuck on my head. I feel like I'm imprisoned. However, if I was going to be wearing a pair of these today, it would be these ones, these little paper clips. I'm obsessed with these. I think it's because they're simple and cute. They can be paired with really anything, but I'm also a huge dork, and the office supply store is one of my favorite places in the world. I love getting new pens and Post-it notes and paper clips and staplers. I don't know why. Maybe it brings me back to school shopping days, the promise of a new academic year, which always excited me. The smell of fall in the air while my mother filled our cart with crisp blank notebooks and unused ballpoint pens, which held so much promise. I just love stationery. And these beautiful little shiny sun earrings set with moonstones, I've always loved moonstones. They're supposed to have the power to nourish, give passion, and guide you on your inner path, which I really need right now. I really need some guidance because with Halloween coming up and me not being as prepared as I usually like to be, any help to find my inner path and some peace would be much appreciated. So if you are interested in checking out Ana Luisa Jewelry, maybe some early Christmas shopping, maybe a gift for yourself or someone you love, click the link in the description box and use code SLEUTHANY10 for 10% off your next purchase. That's SLEUTHANY, SLEUTHANIE 10 for 10% off your next purchase. Thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video, and as always, thanks to all of you who understand that sponsors are essential to this channel. I appreciate you. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the case of Alissa Turney. Now, you guys know that Alissa's sister, Sarah, is a very good friend of mine. I respect her so completely, and we have all been rooting for her and her efforts to force the Phoenix Police Department to make moves on her sister's disappearance. It's been 19 years since 17-year-old Alissa Turney vanished while living with her stepfather, Michael Turney, and her sister, and our sister, Sarah. We can't go over the entire case, but Sarah and I did do a 2-part video on Alissa's story, which I will link in the description box if you haven't seen it yet or you're not familiar with the case. But from the get-go, in this case, it was pretty clear that something was not right when it came to Michael Turney. And Sarah has always believed that he knows what happened to her sister. Michael Turney was allegedly the last person to see Alissa before she disappeared. He claimed she had run away, and he produced a note in her handwriting saying she'd gone to California. Michael Turney was eventually arrested in 2008, but not in connection to his stepdaughter's disappearance. Instead, he was taken in because of a plot to bomb the local chapter of the electricians unit. Found in his home were 26 pipe bombs and some incendiary devices, as well as a manifesto of sorts, during which he claimed Alissa had been killed by some union assassins. Sarah has been pushing non-stop for the police to take another look at Michael Turney because they told her that once he was in prison for the whole bomb plot, they'd also get him for his involvement in Alissa's disappearance. But then Michael Turney got out of prison and nothing happened. Every time she wanted to talk about Alissa, why aren't you arresting my father? What's going on? What's happening? They would just push her off and try to buy time. Eventually they told her, no body, no crime. We can't prosecute without a body. We don't know where Alissa is. And we can't do anything. So what had changed from when Mike Turney was in prison for literally having an arsenal in his home, and the police were like, yeah, we're going to prosecute, we're going to bring him to justice, to 3 days before he got out, when the detectives were transferred, and all of a sudden, there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough to prosecute him.
So what happened was a few days before my father was released from prison, they reassigned the 2 detectives. And that's when they really went silent on me. And at the time, I'm thinking, because I was told, when your father's released from prison, we will arrest him the day he's released so that he cannot combine sentences. Because if we arrest him while he's in prison, he will get a shorter sentences because he's able to combine them. So I'm thinking, okay, great, nothing to worry about. So when they get reassigned, I'm thinking, okay, well, that makes sense. The case is over. They have everything they need. They're going to arrest him. It's going to go to court. There's no reason for them to be on the case anymore. And then eventually, obviously, he's not arrested. And I ask for a meeting, and they sit me down with my supposed new detective, who literally wouldn't take off her sunglasses, who would never speak to me over the phone. This is the first time I'm meeting her, and they bring in Summershoe because he's actually competent about the case. Like I said, she says nothing, and Summershoe says, we've decided that we can't prosecute any longer without a body, but we won't look for that body. You will have a billboard on every freeway in Phoenix with Alissa's name on it, which never happened. And then he looked at me, and I'm obviously crying my eyes out at this point because I don't understand. They promised me this prosecution for so long. And he says, Sarah, your best chance is to get media exposure. And that's when I went crazy getting media exposure. And I don't think that they expected me to get as much as I have.
You had the petition, and once it hit 100,000, somebody said to you, it doesn't matter if there's 5 million signatures, it's not going to make a difference. Did that happen?
Yeah, that was Commander Christina Gonzalez when I had my most recent meeting with them in January. I said, listen, you told me to get media exposure, and I have it. I have millions of media impressions. I have a media deal. I have a petition with 100,000 signatures. What more is it going to take? And she said, it doesn't matter how many signatures you have. We need a body. And I said, so what are you doing to look for this body? And she said, well, Sarah, if we knew where the body was, we would go get it. She said, I need a body. And I said, I disagree. There are other cases that have been tried and won with less evidence in this same county. Said, we are not setting a precedent. You guys are just refusing to do it. Well, no, and Summershoe's always been on the case, Sarah. And I'm like, what about that email that you sent me saying that you're dissolving the cold case unit and he's no longer on the case? Or the other email that's the highlight on my Instagram story with the word savage that says, and furthermore, Detective Anderson and I are no longer agents for your case. What about those? And she says, I can't speak to anything you were told in the past.
But there is a cold case unit.
Yeah, no, they lied to me. They 1,000% lied to me. One detective was legitimately reassigned to sex crimes online. But the other detective, Detective Summershoe, continued to work on other cases that he had prior to that, including all the girls that he introduced me to. He was never taken off their cases. And now, according to them, never taken off my case. But every time I email my current sergeant, who's supposed to be in charge of the case, I copy Detective Summershoe, and I copy the commander of the unit, and he always writes back and copies no one. And then I write back and copy everyone again. It's a fun game we play.
When Sarah went to the police and she was like, what's going on? Why is he free? The police told her to get the word out and raise awareness for the case, which she did and has been doing tirelessly. Sarah has contacted many YouTubers, including myself and Kendall Ray. She's been the guest on podcasts talking about her sister's story. She recently started her own podcast called Voices of Justice, which the link will be in the description box if you're interested in checking it out and hearing about Alissa's story from beginning till end. It's an excellent, excellent podcast. And recently Sarah took to TikTok, and this created a lot of talk about the case. And she believes that this was the inevitable breakthrough.
I did not expect to blow up on TikTok overnight, so thank you. And you've been asking for a story time, so let me tell you why I'm even here. In 2001, my sister Alissa Turney went missing. She was 17 and I was 12. She was basically the only mom I ever had. But everyone thought that she just ran away, and the police didn't even look into it until 2008, 7 years later. That's when they sat me down, told me that my father had been molesting Alissa for our entire lives. They told me I had a sister I didn't know about, and that they were raiding our home right that minute, looking for evidence that he killed my sister. But they actually found 26 pipe bombs, the largest pipe bomb bust in Phoenix history. And I still didn't believe it, but eventually I came around and I said, how can I help you guys? And they said, you know what, don't worry about it, kid. When your dad gets out of prison for his bomb charges, we're gonna go ahead and arrest him for the murder of your sister. And I said, great. But that didn't happen. And then they sat me down and said, sorry, your best chance is getting media exposure. So that's what I'm trying to do. Please share this and listen to Voices for Justice about Alissa.
Even though the New York Times claims that it is unclear how Sarah's online efforts have affected this case, it is not unclear how her efforts have affected this case. It's very clear that without Sarah, this wouldn't even be a case and the police would have already closed it, as I believe, in my personal opinion, they wanted to. Sarah has been a nuisance to them. She's been a thorn in their side for years, not allowing them to forget that her sister is gone and that they either need to find her or find who's responsible for her no longer being alive. Now, there's finally been movement in the case, and Michael Turney has been arrested and charged with the second-degree murder of Alissa Turney. On August 20th, the Maricopa County Attorney held a press conference to announce the new charges. And during this press conference, she did give a shout out to Sarah, rightly so.
To Alissa's sister, Sarah Turney, your perseverance and commitment to finding justice for your sister, Alissa, is a testament to the love of a sister. Because of that love, Alissa's light has never gone out. And she lives on in the stories and photos that you have shared with the community. This passion you have and have demonstrated for her during your journey is something that will keep Alissa's memory alive forever.
But she also gave the police, like, all the credit. Okay, check this out. Check out this press conference.
And I would also be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank the dedicated officers at the Phoenix Police Department for their decade-long work on this case. They worked tirelessly to get us to this point. They laid down the facts as they saw them. They didn't give up on Alissa. Their integrity and professionalism is what we expect from our police departments, and I could not be prouder of them, and so should the community.
And listen, I'm sure the police did work very hard on this, and I never want to talk down about a law enforcement team who is doing their best and who honestly cares. They're just stopped by red tape or, whatever else happens during the course of an investigation that prevents you from kind of following through on things. But let's be honest here. It's been years. Sarah has been fighting with them to pursue this. They told her to drum up awareness. She did. But nothing happened. They've ignored her, they've made her feel like a silly little girl, and they made her feel powerless. But still, she pushed on because she knew that that's what Alissa would have done for her. But those of us who have been following Sarah's journey, we know that. So I guess we are going to have to be satisfied with the progress thus far and cross our fingers that the police and the DA do have enough evidence to present a strong second-degree murder case against Michael Turney. I did ask Sarah if there's anything she wanted to say, and she wanted everyone to know that she's overwhelmed by the news of her father's arrest, and she is taking time to process everything. But she wanted to thank you for all the love and support that you've given her. And I expect that this is an incredibly hard time for her because although, yes, her sister's finally getting some justice, her father is still arrested for the murder of her sister. So it doesn't really matter how bad of a guy your father is. It's still your father, and now there's kind of a validation that he probably did kill your sister, and that's gotta cause some conflict in a person's heart and mind. So let's just send our thoughts to her, let her know that we're here, that we're watching, and that we support her. Next, we have the overturning of Scott Peterson's death penalty by the California Supreme Court. Laci Peterson was 27 and 8 months pregnant when her husband, Scott Peterson, took her life on Christmas Eve 2002 because he was having an affair with Amber Frey. So this obviously does not mean that his conviction is overturned. It just means he will most likely be serving a life sentence unless the state wants to ask for the death penalty again at a new sentencing hearing, which in my opinion will most likely not happen. The California Supreme Court justices claimed there were significant errors in jury selection during the original trial, but they did say that they believed he got a fair trial up until the sentencing portion. Potential jurors were dismissed improperly from the jury pool after they said that they personally disagreed with the death penalty, but they would be willing to follow the law and impose it if that was necessary. So essentially, Scott Peterson claimed the jury was stacked with pro-death penalty jurors, and the California Supreme Court agreed, stating, quote, "While a court may dismiss a prospective juror as unqualified to sit on a capital case if the juror's view on capital punishment would substantially impair his or her ability to follow the law, a juror may not be dismissed merely because he or she has expressed opposition to the death penalty as a general matter." End quote. This decision was unanimous. So in my opinion, it doesn't really matter where you stand on the death penalty. There is an argument there that Scott Peterson was rightly sentenced initially and is now using a legal loophole to avoid his punishment. California has a moratorium on the death penalty since Governor Newsom signed an executive order in 2019, which will remain in effect until he is no longer governor. And there's other cases in California where you could definitely say that this person certainly wouldn't be missed from the world. The case that comes to mind of someone who really did deserve the death penalty but will live out the rest of their days behind bars is Joseph DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer. I mean, how many people did DeAngelo sexually assault, murder, and terrorize? He was charged with 13 murders, but we're well aware it's probably much more than that. He terrorized the state of California for years, and he now claims to be a feeble old man who poses no threat to anyone, sitting in a wheelchair, all hunched over in court, trying to make himself look as old and as feeble as possible.
The once young and robust accused rapist and murderer, now looking frail at 74 years old, Joseph DeAngelo, was wheeled into the makeshift courtroom held at Sacramento State University to face the victims and the families he haunted. One victim was only 16 years old.
Beth Snelling woke up to a man covering her nose and mouth, with his hand whispering in a low, raspy voice, "You're coming with me. Don't scream or I'll stab you."
Her father killed while saving her life. Today, decades later, there's justice.
Murder in the first degree, how do you plead?
He blindfolded her and told her to lie face down. He returned to the bedroom to place more dishes on her husband's body and told him, quote, "If these dishes fall, I'll kill everyone in the house." He then cut her nightgown in several places with a knife and proceeded to rape her.
His first two murders, a young Sacramento couple walking their dog late one night.
Each time he escaped, slipping away silently into the night, leaving communities terrified for years.
Yet, we have video footage of him exercising in his cell, his jail cell, climbing over the furniture in there, like jumping right on the bed and cleaning off, higher to reach places because he's got to jump on his bed to do that. Looking pretty strong and healthy for his 74 years.
A sociopath, in our world, we understand, is a person who has no respect for the rights of other human beings, no respect for the law, no compassion, no empathy, no remorse. He is a person who lacks a conscience or a soul. And under the definition of a sociopath, he is a person who lies, deceives, and manipulates others for no other reason than personal gain. Over the last 2 years, since the first day he was wheeled into a courtroom for his arraignment in a wheelchair, in April of 2018 to the day of his plea on June 29th, to this entire week, sitting stone-faced in front of the world, each of us has witnessed a sociopath in action. The truth of who Joseph DeAngelo is lies not just in what happened in the courthouse, but what has happened in his jail cell. One only needs to look back a few months from today to see the real Joseph DeAngelo. We, as part of this team, felt that it was critically important to show the victims, the public, and perhaps the world, this sociopath in action. And I again would remind you of how things unfolded on June 29th when he pled. This is only a snippet of a CD anybody wishes to have at the end of these proceedings of his actions within his jail cell. This is June 1st, just a couple weeks before he pled. He's not a feeble old man, as he portrayed himself to be on June 29. The next video I'm going to show you is from June 17th, just 12 days before. And before I play this, I ask you to watch it closely. Watch it for what he does. Watch his flexibility. Watch his dexterity. Watch his mental drive. Think back on the crimes that he committed. Think back about what he did to escape. Think back what he did to shadow the light. Mr. Totten reminded us a few minutes ago of how Mr. DeAngelo attempted to hide the light so he could remain in darkness during the commission of his crimes. And when we watched this, we were struck by what happened 45 years later. And we hearkened back to those crimes of what he did to hide the light and to remain in the darkness. These are photographs from some of the crime scenes where he put blankets over televisions or lights. And so when you look back in time 4 decades and you now stand in the presence of 2020, you can see that Joseph DeAngelo is no different today than he was 45 years ago. And lastly, just a couple weeks ago, as you see on the top there, again, he's moved to a new cell, I believe, and he's got light once again covered with papers. And this last one is to simply demonstrate to you his mental acuity, his dexterity, his ability to deceive or attempt to deceive the entire world into believing he is a feeble old man. These are just snippets into the window of the mind of a sociopath.
I mean, is he ready to run a marathon? No, but it's a drastic contrast to the man who was sitting in court looking like he had one foot in the grave, only getting out of his wheelchair once to hear his sentencing. So what is justice? I got into a debate with my mother-in-law the other day when she texted me about the Scott Peterson news, and I said I personally think when it comes to violent criminals who premeditate their crimes, we should take it back to the Old Testament, an eye for an eye. And she asked me how I can be so against the taking of a life, but be for the death penalty. And in all honesty, I'm not always for the death penalty. There are many exceptions where life in prison is a better sentence, but for people like Chris Watts and Joseph DeAngelo, in my opinion, they forfeited their rights as American citizens and human beings when they decided to play God and steal the lives of others who were innocent, who hadn't hurt anyone. Chris Watts killed his 2 small daughters twice. The first time it didn't work. He said they woke up or came back into consciousness with bloodshot eyes and dark circles under their eyes from the lack of oxygen as a result of him strangling them. But he didn't have a moment of clarity and think, wow, what have I done? He didn't think, this is my chance to rectify the fact that I just tried to kill my babies. He made another attempt. First Cece, and then Bella, who begged him to not do to her what he had just done to her little sister. But he still did it. He killed his daughters while his wife was in bed in the next room, obviously not feeling like her children were in any danger because it was their father in their rooms with them, not some stranger, not some homicidal maniac off the street. He later wrote about his pregnant wife and the mother of his children in a letter from jail, saying, quote, "All the weeks of me thinking about killing her, and now I was faced with it." He gave her a painkiller so she would feel sleepy and not fight back, and then he killed a pregnant Shanann too, saying, quote, "When she started to get drowsy, I somehow knew I had to squeeze the jugular veins until it cut off the blood flow to her brain and she passed out. I knew if I took my hands off of her, she would still keep me from seeing Nikki. They asked me why she didn't fight back. It's because she couldn't fight back. Her eyes were filled with blood." End quote. Chris Watts planned the murders of his wife and daughters for weeks. Joseph DeAngelo systematically stalked his prey, complete strangers, to take their lives for his own wicked enjoyment. Scott Peterson made sure he had cement blocks made ready for the day when he would finally remove his wife Laci from his life and dump her in the ocean. These are not crimes of passion. These are carefully planned and calculated murders where the perpetrator would have plenty of time to come to his senses and change his mind. And for that, I believe they no longer deserve to live. With Chris and Scott, it's almost worse because they took the lives of people who trusted them. This wasn't some break-in gone wrong or a random act of violence. They were the caregivers and the protectors of their victims. And the heartless act of betraying the trust of those who allowed you into their lives and trusted you, it's unforgivable. And I know that there are many out there who may not agree with me, and that's fine. We can disagree on issues and still respect each other and learn from each other. There's a disturbing trend these days of hating others, of viewing them as enemies if they hold a different political, religious, or moral viewpoint. And it's really so counterproductive for the world that everyone is saying they want to live in. And once again, I blame the mainstream media for their biased reporting on every single issue. If you really want to learn and you want all the facts, which will lead you to an independent decision, do some independent research. Talk to others who hold your same beliefs and talk to those who do not. A plethora of knowledge never hurt anyone. There's no such thing as too much knowledge. And facts don't change in real life, only after they've gone through the filter of CNN and Fox News. And I think that's the real disconnect between people who don't agree on, very clear things that people should agree on. Like killing people is wrong. That's something that I think we should all be able to agree on. It's easy as a casual observer who just watches the news and really isn't that into true crime, like my mother-in-law, to watch this news, hear Scott Peterson isn't going to be facing the death penalty anymore because, he's just not. And then she'd hear he killed his wife, and it's very general. It's very sterile almost. No details. And I agree. The very scary and disturbing details do not always need to be made public. But if you really want to understand the case and you really want to make a determination on whether or not you think this person deserves to continue living after what they did, you should get the nitty-gritty. You should get all the dirty details. Because they are upsetting. It will upset you. You'll see the true depravity. It's not just some passing news story about a woman who was murdered so many years ago. It's a real story that happened to a real person. Okay, back to it after that little rant. I really apologize that I kind of got off track, but it took me over. So the issue with Scott Peterson's sentence being reversed is more about the precedent that it sets, in my opinion, because now his lawyer from the first trial, Mark Garagos, is telling the media that he expects Scott to one day be fully exonerated. This was just the first step. I mean, I did a 3-part series on this case. I think it's called something like, Is Scott Peterson Innocent? And I specifically did it because at that time, this was a big thing. This was what he and his supporters were claiming and pushing and fighting for. So I wanted to re-examine the evidence and see if there was a possibility that an innocent man was facing the death penalty for a crime he did not commit. My personal conclusion was that, yes, the trial was based on mainly circumstantial evidence. You didn't have a witness who saw him actually kill Laci Peterson, but you did have a plethora of red flags which pointed directly towards Scott, and he had the motive. He was carrying on a relationship with another woman while his pregnant wife was at home, and he was telling this woman that someday they would be together. They would be living together. They would be raising her daughter together, and he told her his wife was dead. He actually called his girlfriend Amber from a candlelight vigil being held for his missing wife and unborn son, and he told her he was in Paris for a work trip. He clearly was not worried about where Laci was because he knew, but that's just my opinion. I mean, before Laci and Connor's bodies even washed up, he'd already sold her car and turned the nursery into a storage room. Do I think Scott killed Laci? Yes, I do. But I'm not incredibly upset about him not being put to death, honestly. I'm not a huge fan of really anybody dying, as long as he doesn't try to get out altogether. I'm more upset about Joseph DeAngelo and Chris Watts being allowed to keep their lives after taking the lives of so many others. Now, some previous neighbors of Scott and Laci's remember the couple vividly, and they also remember vividly when Laci went missing and Scott was going door to door asking if anybody had seen her. One neighbor recalled that he looked guilty and that she didn't know what had happened to Laci, but after Scott left, she turned to her husband and said, whatever happened, he did it. Another former neighbor said reversing his sentence was a mistake, saying he should be put to death because he killed 2 people. Another neighbor suggested that maybe Scott should be just let out into the general population of the prison and let justice take its course by the hand of the other prisoners. And this does illustrate, I think, the difference between being personally connected to a case and a victim and being an onlooker with really nothing at stake. Even those people who are not gung-ho about the death penalty can admit there are certain cases where it might be warranted, and if it was our sister or our mother or our child, or even our neighbor that we loved because of how sweet she was and because she always had a kind word for everyone, the stakes are higher. And as always, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that men like Scott Peterson, Chris Watts, and Joseph DeAngelo have the right to live out the rest of their days in prison playing cards and watching TV? I mean, granted, prison isn't the best life, but it is a life. You still have the chance to smile, laugh, hear music, sing, feel joy and excitement. Even if these feelings are few and far between or short-lived, they're still there. Something that their victims no longer have the opportunity to experience. And personally, I would rather take a lifetime in prison than no life at all. Do they deserve a life? Many would say they deserve to live with what they did and that this will be their punishment. But what's missing from that theory is guilt. We're assuming that Chris and Scott and Joseph DeAngelo feel badly about what they have done. And I don't think it's hard to see that they do not. They will say they do. They'll say they're sorry. But they say they're sorry after they get caught.
I've listened to all your statements, each one of them. And I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
DeAngelo's words, a stark contrast to his feeble answers during the trial when he uttered either guilty or I admit over and over again.
Now, one of these men turned themselves in when the guilt was becoming overbearing and they could no longer sleep and they just had to come clean. DeAngelo's been on the run for decades. Scott tried to take off to Mexico, and Chris finally admitted what he had done when his back was to the wall and there was nothing else he could do. I mean, the man went on network television and begged his wife and children to come home when he knew that he had already killed them and dumped his kids into some oil tanks and buried his wife in a shallow grave. Scott Peterson's own sister, Annie Bird, has publicly said she believes 100% that her brother killed his wife and he belongs behind bars. If the DA elects to push for the death penalty again, there would have to be a whole new jury, a whole new trial with presentation of all the evidence all over again. And there's still obviously a chance that they won't succeed in getting that death penalty. So that's why I said earlier, I don't think they'll even try for that again, especially with Scott and his lawyers pushing to get his entire conviction overturned. But ultimately, the DA will consult with Laci's family and take into account what their wishes are on the matter. Okay, one more thing before we go. I wanted to give you an update on the case we covered just a few weeks ago of Dylan Asiu Gomez Perez, the 2-year-old who was abducted from a public market in San Cristobal on June 30th. The authorities tracked down the 2 children who were seen on surveillance, luring Dylan away from the market and delivering him to a woman waiting nearby. These children told the police that this woman had paid them 200 pesos to do this. She claimed to the kids that Dylan was her son and that he was being rebellious and, not cooperating, and he didn't want to leave with her. The authorities are now saying the 23 children recovered during the search for Dylan are unrelated to his case. And according to the Chiapas officials, this woman who took Dylan was going through somewhat of an emotional time. Her husband had just left her. They had been trying and failed to have children, and she felt that if she could produce a child and show this child to him, it would bring him back to her. This woman had been hanging around the market for 2 days looking for a child, and when she saw Dylan, she paid these kids to lure him out. She took him to a hotel overnight, and the next day traveled with him to Las Palmas, 2 hours west of the city, and that's where authorities found them both 44 days later. She now faces up to 75 years in prison. Now, this woman did care for Dylan. She fed him, she took care of him, and when he was returned to his mother, he was in good health. I guess that this is the best possible case scenario, although it's very sad all around. It's the more rare of the possible conclusions when a child goes missing. Every parent who's lost a child to abduction hopes that they were taken by some childless man or woman who just desperately wants to be a parent and that they're being cared for and loved. And luckily in Dylan's case, that's exactly what happened. So there is somewhat of a happy ending, especially for Dylan and his family. But I do feel kind of bad for this woman who wanted a child so badly she took someone else's. Although she was wrong, obviously, and what she did is illegal and she should pay for it. There's no real villain in this story. It's just very sad. And Dylan's mother did make a statement that she appreciated this woman taking care of her son and, keeping him safe. And, that's what it is. Very sad. So that's it for the updates I have for you today, but I am working on a Coffee and Crime Time to update everyone on the case of Suzanne Morphew. There seems to have been some new information and speculation swirling around, so hopefully you join me for that as well. Don't forget to hit like if you liked the video, share it if you think it's worth sharing, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you are still subscribed and notifications are turned on so YouTube doesn't win this battle of not letting you know when I post a new video. Stay kind, stay beautiful, and I will see you very soon. Bye.
Don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down.